Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan, I am just one reader, and today I will be answering the favorite childhood book tag, which was actually originated by the wonderful Anthony Andrews. And I think he must be the youngest person on BookTube, or at least he's the youngest person on BookTube that I know. And he's wonderful, and this is an original tag by him, but I was tagged by the lovely Sean from Sean the Book Maniac. And so these are all questions about favorite things from your childhood. Now, just for the record, in case you were dying to know, my childhood happened not so long ago. I am 26 right now, almost 27. I am turning 27 in October. I feel like Joey on that episode of Friends when everybody turns 30. I think it's the episode's title is the one in which they all turn 30, and that's how I am starting to feel like, why, God, why? But anyway, so my childhood wasn't really that long ago in the first place. I feel like the things that I will be mentioning today happened not so long ago. But still, it's really interesting to answer these questions because some of the answers that I have prepared for this book tag definitely feel like they happened a long time ago, but at the same time, I feel very close to them. I guess because they have really impacted me and they have still influenced me and shaped me into the person and the reader that I am today. So, having gotten that prologue out of the way, let's get actually started with the book tag. So, this is the favorite childhood book tag. I hope you enjoy. Question number one, what was your favorite book as a child? And I have several books that I want to mention, but the first one, of course, has to be Harry Potter. Harry Potter was the book that started me as a reader. I was 7 when Harry Potter came to Mexico and South America. And yeah, I was just there. It was a question of being there at the right place, at the right time. My mother forced me to read this because everybody was falling in love with this Harry Potter book. And so she kind of persuaded me into reading it and I fell in love. And I have chosen the fourth book in the series, The Goblet of Fire, in the original Spanish edition that I originally read. And let me tell you, this copy has been read at least 25 times because The Goblet of Fire was a book that I kept reading and rereading and rereading. And I remember when I was in middle school, I would just never stop reading it. I would read it and I would finish it one night and I would just put it on the nightstand and start it again all over from the top the next morning. And I would do that several times over, and that's why this is the book that I know the most. So yeah, Harry Potter was kind of the book that started me off as a reader. I guess you could even say Harry Potter took away my reader's virginity. Oh, it feels wrong to talk about Harry Potter in a semi-sexual kind of way, but you get what I mean. After Harry Potter, I also fell in love with a series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I found these books at a Scholastic book fair at my school, and I would read them compulsively, and I would just feel the rush of adrenaline every time that I finished one and had to start another one. Then a little bit later on, when I was around 9 or 10, I binge read The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, which I really loved for the magical world building and the characters and the writing style. And I never saw all the religious Christian crap that is in these books, all the allegorical Christianity value that these books have. I never saw that crap, which is fine because I think if I reread these books as an adult, I would not stand that kind of religious propaganda, that religious agenda that C.S. Lewis clearly had when writing them. Then when I was a little bit older, around 11 or 12 years old, I fell in love with series, and my favorite series was the Artemis Fowl series by Owen Colfer. This is an Irish series, and it is the best. I would read these books again over and over again. It was similar to Harry Potter, so I loved that aspect, but also they were much more modern and they felt more technological and contemporary and a little bit snarkier, and I just loved these books. They were very action packed, so I was just in love with them. Then, when I was around 11 or 12, at the same age, I read for the first time what I still consider to be my favorite book of all time, and that is The Never-Ending Story by the German author Michael Ende. And this is the original copy that I read, and you can see that because it's completely torn apart and it's falling to pieces. It is the one of the most valuable books that I own. It's a beautiful hardback that is no longer in print. It's beautifully illustrated. Every chapter opens up with a different letter from the alphabet, with a different illustration. And yeah, this is my favorite book. It's one of my favorite possessions. And the last book that I want to mention in this category or in this question is, of course, another one that I still consider to be one of my favorite books, Historic Materials, which is actually a trilogy, but it really feels more like one book. And since I have it in this compact bind-up from the Everyman's Library, yeah, I read Historic Materials for the first time when I was around 13 and 14, and just as with Narnia, I loved it. I loved the series for the adventure and the fantasy and the characters and the writing style, because Philip Pullman is God. I am saying that rhetorically, of course, because I'm an atheist. But he is God. He is the real deal. And so I never picked up on that kind of atheist agenda. But then the next times that I reread this book as an older teenager, and now that I have reread it recently as an adult, it's just wonderful. It's even better. This is like the Bible for me. Again, rhetorical. Question 2, what was your favorite film as a child? This is incredibly difficult. I don't have just one that I can say this was my favorite movie. I've always loved movies, always. Of course, the Harry Potter movies. I mean, the day that I saw... I remember the time that I went to the midnight release or the midnight screening of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone. And I have that memory so clear in my mind. And it was an orgasmic experience. It was complete ecstasy that I felt that night. And I will never forget that first time that I saw the boats approaching Hogwarts. When we see Hogwarts for the first time with a beautiful score by John Williams, I was dead. So, of course, Harry Potter. Of course, I loved Matilda. I think Matilda was a movie that I saw consistently, very frequently, and I related to her so much, so much, and I just found it incredible. Amélie, the French film by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, which is not really a children's movie, but I watched it from a very early age, and it just really stuck with me. Titanic was a movie that I saw when I was 6 years old, and my parents got me the VHS, which was actually a set of 2 VHS tapes, because the movie was so long that it had to be split in 2 parts. And they gave that to me as a Christmas present when I was 6. So I watched that, and it was traumatic, and I just watched it again repeatedly, over and over. And of course, Disney musicals, because if you do not have memories of watching and singing along to Disney musicals as a child, you did not have a childhood. And I certainly had a very musical childhood. I'm a very musical person. And I think my favorites are Hercules, Aladdin, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I actually think Hunchback has the best music, the best score of any Disney musical. Question number 3 is, what was your favorite song as a child? Oh man, how much time do you have? I am a very musical person, as I just said, and I cannot just think of one song. I mean, I am also part of the generation that grew up with the Broadway musical Wicked, so of course I grew up singing Wicked. Defying Gravity still is pretty much my favorite song because it's the song that I sing every day to warm up the voice. I love it, and I remember singing that song when it first came out, when the cast album first came out in 2004, 2003. And yeah, I had that cast album on repeat and I would listen to it every single day. And yeah, all the songs from Wicked, but in particular, it's time to try defying gravity. I just love that song. I mean, Broadway musicals and movie musicals were something that I grew up with. I grew up listening to my grandmother's recordings of Cats, Magical Mr. Mistopheles, oh well, The Phantom of the Opera, of course, which was my first Broadway musical. I saw Phantom of the Opera when I was 6 or 7, and I still remember the kind of wave of sound from the orchestra pouring over me, and it still is one of my favorite musicals. And fun fact about me, before my grandmother died, I was actually able to sing in a concert in a big theater, and I sang songs from the Phantom of the Opera to her because she was the one who gave me that passion for the Phantom of the Opera. So it was really nice that I got to sing Music of the Night from Phantom to her before she died. And yeah, what else? West Side Story, The Sound of Music, even though I have never watched The Sound of Music, the movie. I've never seen it. Don't ask me why. It's a big unsolved mystery of my life. But I did watch the show, the musical stage version, because it was here in Mexico for a very long time. And I went to see that show over 6 times. And so yeah, The Sound of Music. The hills are alive with the sound of music. I grew up singing all these songs, even though even though I didn't even know where they came from. They were part of what I always listened to and what I sang. Question number 4. What was your favorite TV show as a child? I loved Rocko's Modern Life from Nickelodeon. I loved Hey Arnold. I thought he was the coolest guy. And Helga Pataki is my favorite character of any TV show ever, I think. I also loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? Do you remember that show that was kind of spooky and creepy, and the intro alone was terrifying? Those were my favorites. Question 5. What was your favorite author as a child? Well, I guess I would be repeating myself from the first question of what were my favorite books. But I guess my favorite authors when I was a child were definitely, of course, J.K. Rowling, Philip Pullman. I read a lot of Philip Pullman very quickly. I read a lot of his short children's fiction, and then I moved into historic materials, and then I read the Sally Lockhart books, which are amazing, and they don't get all the attention that they deserve, honestly. And then I read everything that Philip Pullman has published very quickly. I also read a lot of Stephen King from a very early age. I started with The Shining, I think it was The Shining or Carrie, one of those, when I was in 5th grade. So I was pretty young to be reading Stephen King, and I just really loved him as a storyteller. And how creepy. I've always been a fan of really gruesome, creepy, spooky, and violent or sexual things in film, in books. I've always loved when people are not afraid of going there, of going places that people would be afraid of naturally. I also have to mention Dan Brown because I started reading The Da Vinci Code when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade, and I just loved the fun ride that it was. Michael Ende, who wrote The Neverending Story, he has a lot of books translated into Spanish, and I adore him. Owen Colfer, Jonathan Stroud, who wrote the wonderful Bartimaeus trilogy, which is another series that I don't think gets enough attention, and it's wonderful for people who enjoy Harry Potter. You should read that if you enjoy Harry Potter. I also loved C.S. Lewis, What else? Carlos Ruiz Zafón, the Spanish author of The Shadow of the Wind. What else? What else? Yeah, I guess those were the authors and the books that I read as a child. Also, Eva Ibbotson, the English writer who wrote The Secret of Platform 13, The Star of Kazan, and many others. She's a wonderful writer. Question 6. What was the worst book that you read as a child? I remember that I really, really hated The Little Prince by Saint-Exupéry, you know, the French classic children's novel, Le Petit Prince. I hated that book, but I couldn't tell you why. I honestly don't remember the book, what it's about in the first place. I just remember that I really, really hated it, but that was probably because I was forced to read it. So they made me read it, so I was probably kind of trying to rebel against that. But a book that I read and was definitely traumatic, and it still is a traumatic memory that I have and will forever carry with me, was a book that I was, again, forced to read in school when I was very, very young. I must have been in the 3rd grade or 4th grade. It was a book about the true story of a French saint, a woman whose name was Ines, I think. And basically, she was not even a woman. She was a little girl. It was a little French girl who became a martyr. And if you don't know what that means, well, what that entails, it means that she was killed. A little French girl who was fucking beheaded. She was decapitated because she believed in God and she was a good Christian, and she was murdered for her faith. And there was this very graphic, gruesome, almost Tarantino explicit level of description in a scene in which they cut her head off. And that is why you should send your kids to Catholic school, because it's just fun. Question number 7. What is one character from your favorite books as a child that you would like to meet and become friends with? So, firstly, I came up with Hermione from Harry Potter, but honestly, Hermione is so much like me that we would hate each other. It would be like the third war, you know? I guess I would actually be much better off with Ron Weasley. I think I would be Ron's Hermione, you know, in a way, and that's fine. Also, the protagonist from my favorite book, The Neverending Story, he is a boy that was very much like the kind of boy that I used to be. He was, so his name is Bastian Balthazar Bucks, which is a great example of alliteration. And so Bastian was a young kid. He was obese, like me. I was a very fat kid. He was a bullied kid. I was never bullied. I was just shy, and I've always enjoyed being alone. And he, you know, took shelter in this, reading this book, this wonderful book of The Neverending Story. And that's how I used to feel when I was growing up. I was very insecure, kind of shy, very dreamy, very, you know, with a very big fantasy inner life. And so, yeah, I would like to be friends with someone like that, like Bastian Balthazar Bucks. That's it. Those are all the questions. Now I have to tag some friends, and I'm gonna tag people that are more or less from my same generation, in my same age group, kind of. Firstly, Adam from Memento Mori. He is a little bit older than I am, but he is still one of the young studs from BookTube. Also, James from James Chatham, and Chris from Chris Bookish Cauldron, and everybody that would like to do this tag. I am sorry if I am not explicitly tagging you, but I am just looking at my phone and I am not very good at, you know, finding people here on BookTube. So please go ahead and do this tag, and thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I will see you on the next video.